Let's see how the application works in the cloud.
We're here on our trampolines, talking about how on our project, okay. I'm Dan Fernandez, you are?
Brady Gaster.
So Brady, we are using Azure on this application.
Imagine that, considering we both work in Azure tools.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think what we want to do is kind of draw out the things in Azure we're doing to connect up the application to make it better.
I think we can do that. Can we get
So
started?
maybe start with the website and the staging slots.
Yeah, sure. So what we're doing first over here is we actually have Azure App Service. We have this awesome thing called Web Apps, and that's actually what we are writing. So this is us over here, coding up inside of Visual Studio. So we're all like writing everything inside of VS. And then we could either use VS to publish directly to Web Apps, or if we wanted to go through CI, which I think you're going to talk about a little bit more.
Do you want me to draw it?
Yeah, you can draw that now.
So normally in Visual Studio, we have the ability to publish, like a person clicks publish and they're publishing an application. With Visual Studio Online, instead what's happening is this you, the Brady? The stick?
Sure.
So Brady, and maybe we'll add some cooler hair here.
I was on a diet.
Brady checks in his code using git push, origin master, whatever you want to say, and that is going to kick off Visual Studio Online to, instead of having to manually do it, Visual Studio Online will update, and this is one of the things we probably need to draw on here, are these different slots. So we can call one CI for continuous integration, dev, stage, and prod. And I'll just draw these little boxes. And that way, rather than us having to test, when he does this, this can kick off.
So over here in our data tier, we're actually using Azure SQL. So I've got basically a SQL Server DB running in the cloud. All of our data lives in this database. And what we've got kind of in the middle right here is Entity Framework, and we're actually using Entity Framework 7.0, which is our new beta one. So the data gets pulled out of that database using EF, and then it gets funneled into our web app using .NET code. And we're actually, we have a couple of different things in the web app. We have an API controller, or a couple of API controllers. So those are all going to pull data from SQL Server, and then when the individual pages load for like the, the front end user site, this is kind of the same process. EF is going to pull the data out, and we're going to party on it from there.
Let's talk about, this big box. One of the key things in here is location data.
Yes.
What location data is in there, and what does it mean for the app?
Okay, what it means for the app is when you're on the front end, either on the web app and you want to search for an activity, or if you're on your phone and you want to search for an activity, we wanted to kind of implement this in two ways. One is you would type in your zip code and just do a search. Or if you trust us and you don't mind us having your geolocation, you can actually click OK in the browser. We'll just get your geolocation, and then we'll basically feed that back to a spatial query, actually a stored proc that we wrote. So we're actually looking to see if we can do that kind of geo functionality in Elasticsearch. And here we can, but Jeff's taking on that role right now. He's kind of spelunking with that. But that's what we're using SQL for in that case. And the idea is we just have a huge list of all the postal codes. Activities are going to happen in postal codes, so we have a marriage between the postal codes and where they're actually happening, so people can search for the activities by location or by zip code.
So I'm just going to write storage here.
What can I store in storage, Dan?
Well, there's a number of things you can do. The one we are using is called blob storage. There we go. Binary large objects, basically like files or parts of files, a number of things, anything sort of like a file, right? So what we're gonna do is allow people, and maybe I'll just draw the obligatory data store here, and I want to have images, right? So the idea is, somebody's uploading an image or an activity. It's like, hey, come help restore this park, for example. You want to upload, say, a picture or multiple pictures of that. What we do is basically do a file upload with ASP.NET. It takes the content type, and then we create a data store, almost like, think of this as a little container that's going to have our images. So all of this is in the data store called Azure Storage, and this can store over 100 terabytes of data, and it's really our massive scale. Almost everything in Azure uses storage at some point. From virtual machines, their actual virtual hard drives are stored in there. Somewhere in here, we'll try application insights. Let's see if I can spell. That is the hardest part of application insights, spelling it dynamically. So Application Insights basically is, and I think some folks have talked about it, it gives you two things, right? It lets me track what's going on with my website, lets me know if my website is down by even pinging it from multiple locations to make sure that it's up, and really that application performance monitoring.
But all these things we've implemented with this system, and we built it in 3 days.
Yep.
So we've actually done all this, used all these components and our code in 3 days time. So, you know, we can, Dan and I, who don't code that often, can, you know, get this done in 3 days with, you know, a room full of awesome people. Then your room full of awesome people can probably do the same thing in probably even less time.
It was great to see how Jeff helped us out, even remotely. Take a look.
I'm helping out today with the database, with the data model that we're building out to support this application.
So tell me a little bit about the process for building out this model. Are you expecting any input coming down from the top? Because the way I think about applications is at the bottom you have the database and then the layers sort of build on top. What information came from the top layers to you already that you have?
We initially heard a collection of views, different actions that we want to be able to accomplish inside the application. So we started off mocking up a series of views, just what kind of things we want to be able to capture, what types of actions we want to be able to take inside the application. And we were able to quickly turn that into a data flow diagram. You know, what types of data do we need to actually store, and where can we reduce duplication? What are the relationships between these different views and things that we need to capture? And from there, we took that simple model that we just whiteboarded, turned it into a couple of entity framework classes, generated the database from there.
Fantastic. So we're storing all this stuff on Azure, is that right? How hard is it to set up the environment in Azure?
So for right now, I'm setting up the database. We'll work on setting up those production areas a bit later. But for now, we're setting up a database so that we can do that collaborative development with each other. But it was real easy to set up, and within a couple minutes, it was up and running.
Well, that's anticlimactic.
I know.
But back in the day, we used to have to like file new and then write all this DDL and do all this stuff.
You know, how many consultants are losing weeks of billing time because it's 5 minutes, click, click, click on Azure portal?
We just don't.
This is ridiculous. How did we make this so easy?
Let's not tell the customers this. Let's just pretend we. You guys aren't recording this, are you? Okay. So, how many entities do we have? How many classes do we have? How big is the database?
Honestly, we're starting off with about a dozen. It's a simple model to start, and we've got room to grow easily if need be.
Okay, so I looked at the code that's been checked in already. You have a base model and you already have 2 migrations in there. Tell me a little bit about how Entity Framework migrations work and how you're using them in this project.
So Entity Framework migrations, they're such an easy thing to get started with. As a developer who doesn't write a bunch of SQL, it's a snap for me to be able to say, here's the objects that I want to use. And then with ASP.NET 5 tooling, I can drop down to the command prompt and say, Entity Framework migration add, and it will take all those objects that I've defined, add them as a migration, generate all the SQL necessary to build out those database objects.
Do you foresee
scenario?
Do you foresee having a lot more migrations over time? Obviously, the database is going to change.
And that's a great point there, that as we change the model, the migrations have saved, here's the state of the model at the point that the database was last updated. So I can add another migration later because we've added new fields, we've extended what that volunteer person looks like inside our data model, and Entity Framework knows how to change our database appropriately in a non-destructive manner.
And so even if there are changes, it's okay, right? Even if there are changes, it's okay.
Yeah, change is good.
Well, fantastic. Get to it, man. It's good talking to you.
Alrighty, catch you later.
Take care, bud. It was good to have some feedback from friends. Take a look.
One of the things we looked at to improve the website was to look at optimization, so web performance. And so one of the really big improvements we can make is to optimize images. Did you optimize the images?
No, I did not.
All right, so this machine you're on already have this extension called Image Optimizer, which is really, really cool, because if you go to your images folder.
That's in my W root.
Let's see, okay, there's a lot of images. So what you can do is you can right-click the folder and optimize images. Yep.
Just click it?
Just click it. And so what happens is that this extension run some of the like industry standard tools for optimizing your images. And you can see here, you can see something is happening. We actually get a nice progress bar. See here down at the status bar, you can see how far it's going. It's a lossless compression, but the image is going to be smaller. But it runs as a background process, so nothing.
So I can go and close. So
You can
like,
just continue
open files
coding.
and whatever.
Yeah, it's now done. Yeah. 37% and 26 kilobytes was shaving off these images.
Wow.
Right, and so this is a really, really good way to optimize websites because the majority of the combined weight
Right.
of a website is images on average.
Right.
It's very important that our websites, and especially mobile websites, are as performant as possible. Another thing is we looked at how they've set up Gulp. Gulp is this task runner that makes it really easy and convenient to do bundling and minification of CSS and JavaScript, for instance, and a lot of other client-side tasks. There were a few tweaks we could make to really improve the workflow so that automatically whenever they saved or made a change to a JavaScript file or CSS file, that would just be bundled and minified instantly. Do you run all that? Like if you go to task?
I know that if you clean it does.
Okay. So we did those changes and we hooked it up with the Visual Studio events. So whenever they build in Visual Studio, the Gulp task would also run and do the right thing. What you may want to do is that you want the min task right there. If you right click, you can bind that to after build, for instance. So whenever you build your task, it will run that.
That's actually really nice.
Yeah. We kind of utilized sort of the best of Gulp, but in the context of Visual Studio, where we really get that productivity benefit out of tools such as Gulp. We can set up a watch task, so whenever you save a JavaScript file or a CSS file, we can kick off automatically. It just does the minification.
Now, I've normally done set up watches on the command line, by Gulp watch or whatever, but you're saying you should set up as a task in here that then kicks it off?
Yeah, so here at the bottom, Watch Now showed up. You can right-click that, and you want to bind that to Project Open.
Ah, right.
Right, so whenever you open the solution, it automatically starts up.
But it doesn't kick off now, so I need to run it once.
Exactly. But it's really important to notice that Visual Studio doesn't change anything about Gulp, right? Nothing changes. It's the exact same thing as if you were to do it through the command line, because it's the exact same commands. It's the exact same version of Gulp and Grunt and NPM and Bower and all these other tools that we ship now with Visual Studio that you would call yourself, right?
My role here on this project is working with Travis, the other UX designer, and I'm more along the lines of developing the visual look and feel.
You want it in the location where it's flushed.
And then I'm interpreting that into something that we can use.
I'm wondering if it needs to, like he's saying, does it need to be?
It's fun to sit next to devs. Yeah, I don't care what the size is. I just want the size to be consistent. Not only am I trying to finish this project, but I'm also listening to how the developers are using our own tools. You're saying that the
Like unless you're resizing.
So that's really exciting. Anytime I can see developers using our tools in the trenches, trying to make things happen, it's just a great opportunity as a UX person.
It was great to see how everything came together. Take a look at how cool it turned out.
My name is Latko. With me are Pranav and Connie, and we're going to show you what we've been doing for the past 3 days and where we are at with the Already project. Cool. So we built a website that you can use to actually search for activities using your zip code and then volunteer for an activity, view your activities, and so forth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for activities near my zip code.
Yeah, and that was one of the main things that we wanted to kind of get done, right? To make sure the folks who wanted to volunteer can find things near them, because all the volunteering is always physical, so they need to be some kind of geo.
Yes.
And we built the whole backend, right, for the geo search.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
Cool.
I'm assuming that a lot of people talked about the back end already.
Yeah,
So we're going to talk a little bit about the front end.
Well, now it's actually working, right? You were talking about it.
That's
Now
right.
it's
So
there.
I inputted the zip code. It's 98121, which is Seattle downtown. And what happens now is we get back the search results.
Cool.
And the search results here will show us all of the activities that were registered that are near me in a 10-mile radius. We can select an activity, let's say Drawn Up Fire Prevention Day. And we can see the location, and we can also see the volunteer button. Clicking on this button, what we can actually see is that the app will ask me to log in using social providers. I'm going to use Twitter for this example.
And this goes back to this notion that both the volunteer app and the website use the same login credentials. Everything's OAuth. We're relying on these common providers. You're going to OAuth in, and then you can go and start volunteering for something.
Yeah, so I'm going to authorize the app. This is the normal OAuth flow, right, Pranav?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No fakings.
No faking, yeah. So I'm gonna authorize the app. It's gonna.
Only developers have to say that quantification.
So-
There's no faking here.
So what's gonna happen is gonna return me back to my activities where I can see all the activities that I've signed up for.
These are all things you already volunteered for.
Yes.
It's under your profile.
So if I go back to Madrona Fire Prevention Day, I can also unenroll. We will also add searching over keywords so people can more easily find stuff that they're interested in. And also the ability for volunteers to say whether or not the task they were assigned is completed or whether or not it cannot be completed for whatever reason.
Cool, and you guys have Bing Maps integrated, so you can kind of see where the pin is. Awesome. Yeah, it's really coming together. I mean, considering we had nothing 3 days ago. I said this
definitely.
When we talked about mobile app and this app, it's really trying to look great. I see all the branding stuff's in there, and yeah, we're gonna get this thing done. Well, thank you all so very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.